to this wellness summit. This is kind of our first little foray into it. We've had such a great response. I think we're going to do another one probably in June, and we're going to have a much larger venue. And so that's kind of what we're all about here. This obviously is New Image Health and Wellness. We have the dental side over there. In the middle of the building, we have Sleepwell Southern Colorado, which is a dental sleep medicine business for those of you who may have snoring or sleep apnea or that kind of thing. We can treat you without you having to wear a CPAP, which is pretty cool. But just quickly, our focus on that is we're also credentialed through the VA, and so we know that veterans that have PTSD have a higher incidence of obstructive sleep apnea. So you can imagine if you've got PTSD and somebody wants to put a CPAP mask on you, doesn't go well, so that's where we come in. But anyway, and this is New Image Health and Wellness. Let's see if I'm going to go the right way here. Yeah. So there's a lot to go over today. We're going to learn about the things that we offer here at New Image Health and Wellness because we want you to be the boss of your health, right? So as we're looking at this, how did all of this start? Some of you guys already know this story, but I think it's worth repeating. Back in, everybody remember 2019? Yeah. So
good old days, right?
Yeah, the good old days. So 2019, actually, we got into 2020, and by that time in the fall, in October, my husband and I both had COVID, and I had mine with a lovely side of pneumonia, and ended up in the hospital up in Colorado Springs. And so it was one of those things where, I already had. I'm not here to throw Western medicine under the bus. That's not what I want to do here. I just want to focus on what we do. And just kind of make that something that can be adjunctive to your Western medicine experience. Certainly that, again, don't want to throw that under the bus, but focus on what we do. But it's important to talk about how I got here. And so here I am laying up in the hospital in Colorado Springs. And oh, by the way, they're shutting the door on the ambulance and telling my husband, you may not see her again. And so, so that was fun. And then they don't let the man come with me because, heaven forbid, we live together, we're both sick. Does that even make sense?
Yeah.
And so I end up in the hospital, and again, there may be some rabbit holes that I'm going to go down this evening. So go with me, don't go with me. No judgment here, and I'm trying not to be political. I'm just going to give you what I know. So as I'm up there, and I am not vaccinated. If you want to be vaccinated, be vaccinated. If you don't want to be vaccinated, don't. I don't really care. I particularly am not. So I'm up in the hospital, and at the time, the media was telling everybody that it was these darn unvaccinated people that were keeping everybody else out of the hospital, and it was their fault, and they were mounting up in the, piling them up in the hallways. So to be fair, I'm at a surgical hospital. It's not a regular hospital. It's a small hospital. Let's say that it probably has 50 beds, right? So they don't have an ER, okay, but they've shuffled me up there. So I'm asking the doctor, well, gosh, this sounds really terrible. The media is telling everybody that it's my fault, that, no one can get into the hospital. So just curious, what's going on? And he goes, oh, no, that's not it at all. And I said, well, so what's the skinny? I said, how many people do you have here? And he says 4. And I said, 4? I'm sorry, 4? Like 4, he goes, 4 patients total in a whole hospital.
Yep.
Yeah, and I said, so why? And he said, well, okay, imagine this. I've got a hospital full of healthcare workers, right? And then the government comes along and says that they're gonna mandate this vaccine. And bear in mind that these are healthcare workers, right? So well more than half of their staff, if not more, decided they weren't gonna play along and they were let go. And so if you have 50 beds in the hospital and you have less than half of your staff, you're not going to be able to see all 50 beds, right? So you can only see this many beds. But the media reports it as we're at capacity, right?
They were at capacity because they only had so many workers to cover so many beds.
Correct. But what did you think as the general public? You thought you had all 50 beds filled with these nasty unvaccinated people. Sorry, that's my own opinion. But anyway, all that to say, came back here, and I was let go with, I could barely maintain 80% O2 stats on my own. Thankfully, I've got my dental sleep business because I had an oxygen concentrator. And so I'm sucking on air, literally. And, husband's also sick at this time. He never made it in the hospital, thankfully, but some friends called us from Texas, and they said, oh, hey, listen, we're down here in the Amarillo area. We both had long haul COVID, and we had a treatment down here that was really great. Do you guys think you could get down here? And so we're like, I guess. I don't remember the trip down there. Thank God the road is straight, So Martin is like, trying to keep it together, and we were so sick. And just to give, a quick aside of how sick I feel like I was with this, I've been really, really sick 3 times in my life. Number 1 was COVID. Number 2 was cancer, or breast cancer with bilateral mastectomy and chemotherapy. Number 3 was an unfortunate bout with some nicotine pouches. We'll talk about that later. So we go down to Amarillo and we have an ozone treatment. Anybody had one here in the
Well, we know what they're about.
Yeah. So we had an ozone treatment. We stayed the night and we had another one. Game changer. I was like, this should be everywhere. This is amazing.
Wow.
So impressed that I went to Arizona, bought the equipment, got certified, gutted this half of the building, turned it into health and wellness, and I had a doctor who is in Texas. He's my primary care. Now I'm on the phone with him and he's like, okay, you need to have high dose vitamin C. You need to have ivermectin. You need to have fenbendazole. You need to have, and by the way, you couldn't get ivermectin in Colorado.
Correct.
I
Couldn't
had-
get it almost
No,
in
you
the
couldn't
whole
get it
United
anywhere.
States.
Yeah, so I had to have my prescription filled at some clandestine address in Texas. And so like I'm bootlegging ivermectin into Colorado. It was like ridiculous. So anyways, I said, okay, well, none of that stuff exists around here. And IV clinics were not a thing. Like there were none around here. We were the first one that started. And so, I said, okay, we got to figure this out. We got to get high dose vitamin C. You couldn't even get inhaled corticosteroids. In the state of Colorado, you have to have a prescription for a nebulizer. What? Like if I'm in Texas, I just walk into the pharmacy and buy it. Here, you have to have a prescription. Anyway, so get the nebulizer, get the prescription for the inhaled corticosteroids, get the ivermectin, and then start doing ozone. Well, pretty soon we had people, I was telling everybody about it. I would have, my favorite were the cowboys that would come in and they would have one of them had an oxygen concentrator from another bout of illness that somebody in the family had had. He had that hooked up to his generator in the back of the truck. And then I had the wife on it, because that was the only way she could breathe.
Wow.
So she comes in here with O2 sats below 70.
Oh.
Yeah, she was in bad shape. So we do our ozone treatment. 24 hours later, she's fine. And so we
Was
just
she
continued
off
doing
the
that.
oxygen? Did she come off the oxygen?
Yeah, she came off the oxygen after that.
Very good.
And so yeah, and she had several ozone treatments, and it's like buying a bottle of vitamins. You want to buy a bottle of vitamins and think that you can just take one and be okay, but it's more than that. Any of this is. Let's be real, you have to have more than one of something in order for it to really be efficacious. But all that to say, this is how all of this started. Thank God my husband swings a mean hammer. And I think did a pretty darn good job, making it look really pretty.
Mhm.
So anyways, that's kind of how all of that started. And so, really just learning that you need to be your own advocate. From the breast cancer stuff as well, I was bumping into doctors that were not really thinking the way that I guess I thought they should be thinking. At one point I was standing in the parking lot because I fired them. I fired my oncologist, I fired my surgeon, I fired the general surgeon, I fired the cosmetic surgeon, and ended up kind of doing my own thing down in New Orleans. And then found an oncologist that I liked up in Denver. But and again, just being your own advocate, asking questions, making sure that you're doing what's in your best interest. I think the one thing that I will point out, and we're all painfully aware of this right now in Western medicine, is how long does it take you to get an appointment when you go, to get into the clinic?
Months,
Months. Right?
Mm-hmm.
When you get there, how much time do they spend you?
Half an hour.
Yeah, if you're up
If
10
you're lucky.
minutes, yeah.
If you're lucky, right.
Yeah, they're usually 10 minutes limited, right? And if you have two things that you wanna talk about,
You can't.
you can. And it's not that they don't want to, right? You know, it's more that they're limited to that 10 minutes. And we've got great people in the clinic. It's not about that, you know, but it is about what's driving the narrative, not necessarily in this clinic, but in many clinics across, you know, the country. Now they're co-opted by pharmaceutical companies. And it's bad enough that they're in the clinic, now they're in the hospital, and even worse, they're driving the schools. You know, so they're funding the schools, and these kids don't get anything about nutrition, they don't get anything about what we would consider to be naturopathic, you know, pharmacy. But again, just learning, right, just learning. So what is ozone and what is EBU? We had to take the equipment out of here, but ozone basically, when I went down to Amarillo, they take out about a half a pint of blood, and then that's gonna go up into a little bag of sterile saline, and then you have an ozone generator. It's like a little lightning storm in a box. And so, it doesn't really make that sound, but that would be cool. So it's a lightning storm in a box, and it creates ozone, right? Because that's where ozone comes from, right? You know, we can make our own ozone that way. We can draw up that ozone gas and put it into the little bag of sterile saline with your blood, right? Well, ozone is a very unstable gas. We know that oxygen has 2 oxygen molecules. We know that ozone has 3. It kicks off that third one real quick because it's an unstable gas. And then imagine your little red blood cell now has got another extra, it's hyperoxygenated, right? You know, so it's got a little battery pack on it, woo, you know. So that little red blood cell is now going to be able to communicate with the rest of your cells. For those of you who've taken biochemistry, you may remember the Krebs cycle. Okay, so there's a little battery packs of ATP,
Yep.
and that's the energy, right? You know, so that's what is spit out by each of your cells, and in turn, not to get into the details, but helps all of those cells communicate more effectively with each other. You know, you can treat just about anything with it, and I just want to give you a real quick, you know, history of that. Ozone started to be used by the Germans back in World War I to treat mustard gas injuries. Okay, so, you know, they were doing all sorts of cool stuff with ozone. Early in the 1900s, they brought it over to the United States, and we were treating everything. Spanish flu, anybody remember that? You know, not that I was here, but I hear that it was bad. I heard of it. I remember that, I was there. You know,
I caught it.
That's right. Those space things really do work. Anyways, they brought it over the United States, and we were treating everything under the sun with it. I mean, and literally by the millions of people in the United States and abroad. Well, about that time, some smart guy figured out penicillin. Fantastic, right? Fantastic. About that time, we started, anybody remember Pfizer? Heard of Pfizer? We started a pharmaceutical company backed due in large part to the Rockefellers. Anybody heard of them? All right, so what do the Rockefellers own? Standard Oil. What is Standard Oil? Petroleum. What do you use in pharmaceuticals? Petroleum. All right, you use the solvents, you use toluene, you use petroleum, and those are all things used to make pharmaceuticals. Okay, so about that time, guess what else we had? And this is all around 1941. We also had the Food and Drug Administration. At the time, it was called the Food, Drug, and Insecticide Administration.
Nice.
So then we kind of shortened it to just the FDA. And they came along and said, hey, the pharmaceutical companies and Rockefeller in hand came along and said, hey, we want you guys to come out with a statement that says ozone is bad medicine. You know, they were all too happy to do it because they had their hands in each other's pockets even back then. And so in the United States, people are like, oh no, the FDA, they've got our best interest at heart, don't they? You know, and they said this was bad mojo. So we started doing, we stopped doing a lot of ozone and started doing a lot of pharmaceuticals. Now go back to the clinic appointment, right? Now we have to name what you got wrong, we gotta claim what you got wrong, and we gotta write a prescription for it. You know, and they're usually not gonna figure out why you got the problem, right? I mean, that's been my experience anyway. Case in point is my massage therapist that we'll talk about here in just a second. and what she does here, but she had very, very high blood pressure, extremely high blood pressure. And so she goes to see her cardiologist. They're like, here you go. And she's like, well, what's wrong? How come that's happening? I don't know. Well, but aren't we going to figure out what that is and fix it? No. You have to go see, I don't know, go see a nephrologist for that. Maybe it's your kidneys. This is literally the conversation that she has with him. So then she's got to wait another however many months long to get in to see the nephrologist. Now we're at the point where they're like, okay, let's figure out what's wrong with your kidneys. Let's try to fix that. She does not want to be taking medication. And kudos to her for being her own advocate, right? Rather than, okay, well, here's my high blood pressure medication. Here's my high cholesterol medication. Now I've got AFib. Now I've got all these things. And then the question is always, okay, well, if ozone's all that in a bag of chips, does it really work? And how come you guys never hear about it, right? Again, talk about pharmaceutical companies, 1941. You want to see studies? There's studies. There's more studies. There's more studies. They're all over the place, all right? It's not that they haven't done them, but there's no money in it. Pharmaceutical companies can't sell you ozone, right? Okay, so EBU is called extracorporeal oxygenation and ozonation, and it's outside the body, if you will. The little dose that we did up here, all right, now this is gonna go through, what did we say, a half a pint of blood? Now I can go through 2 liters, all right, very cool. Really easy to do, doesn't take any longer than it does to do the low dose. I got a line in, I got a line out, and it goes through basically a glorified dialysis machine.
Wow.
All right, it's really cool. The difference is you get a lot more exposure of a lot more blood to a lot more ozone. And it's going through light therapy as well, right? Have you had a dog that went to the vet and had an injury and got treated with light therapy? Yeah, well, I have. And you can run your blood through light therapy and it stimulates the blood as well. So we can stimulate it with ozone, we can stimulate it with light, we can go through a whole lot of blood like this. Takes about 40, 50 minutes. But we have people coming in and it depends on how you present, right? So like if you present to Sarah and you're a wreck, you're probably gonna need to go through, a few.
Don't say a word, Sarah.
And so it's kind of like that little bottle of vitamins, right? Don't expect to take one. And also it depends, on how sick that you start when you're taking that. I lucked out and had a really, really good experience. I have had some patients that had a lot going on. When you do EBU, when you do ozone, sometimes you'll have what's called a Herxheimer response. It doesn't mean that it's not working. It means your body is overloaded with all this crap that now it has to figure out what to do with. So you might feel a little flu-like for a day or so. That's not the ozone. That's your body working through all the crap that it just killed. Because guess what? It kills virus, bacteria, and fungus on contact. And it's anti-inflammatory. My hands don't hurt, my knees don't hurt, my back doesn't hurt. So that's pretty cool stuff in my opinion. And we also do other IV nutritions here. That's where, I was calling up when I was sick, like, hey, I see that you guys do IV nutrition. They're like, yeah, no. So, because again, that just wasn't a thing that didn't exist at the time. So one of the things that we do is glutathione. It's a master molecule. I just like the picture. So it's a powerful antioxidant. It's made of 3 amino acids. It's been gaining a lot of attention because everybody knows Tom Cruise. Yeah, so Tom Cruise apparently does glutathione all the time. Maybe that's why he still looks like he's 30. I don't know. But anyway, great stuff. It's highly antioxidative. So what does that mean? When things are breaking down in your body, it creates things that are called free radicals. Imagine shoelaces. Imagine your DNA tied up like a little shoelace. And at the end of your shoelaces is what? Like this waxy stuff that holds them together, right? So free radicals are munching on the end of those until they start to unravel. And when they do, you start to age, all right? So if we do things like glutathione, if we do things like ozone, if we do things like EBU, if we do things like hydration, if we do things like selenium and magnesium and all these things that your body sometimes doesn't get because of the crappy diets that we have, we can keep your shoelaces together. Does that make sense? Okay. Nobody wants to trip over their shoelaces. So again, back to the bottle of vitamins. If you're taking your vitamins orally, that's great. But, you know, studies show that you're only gonna absorb about 10 to 20% of that as it goes through the gut. If you're, for lack of a better term, and you're mainlining it, you know, you're gonna get all of
That
it, right?
aged you.
Yeah, you know, so you're gonna get a lot more did. So you're gonna stimulate your body's immune system and be ready for what's next, right? You know, so already we're talking about avian flu, you know, I mean, if you really get into the details, there really hasn't been anybody, they're like, well, we think that this person may have gotten from this bird, and I don't really know, and did it jump from this, and oh, while we're at it, let's kill 50 million birds, and your eggs are gonna be $10 a dozen, right?
$36 for 60 eggs.
Holy moly.
Last weekend, $36.
Yeah.
My girlfriend told me that, I said.
I was
Yeah,
pissed.
yeah.
I was pissed.
I know, I'm very
I'm
covetous
not gonna
of
buy
my
a
little
chicken
chickens.
coop though, because by the time I get the chicken coop and the chickens and the feed, it's gonna cost just as much. So
Oh,
I'm
I
gonna
can
wait
tell, yeah.
till the prices
That's
come
the
down.
trick, yeah, I
And
mean,
then
I
you
gotta
gotta
go in
clean
the
the
cage.
cage.
Yeah, then I gotta clean the cage and I really don't wanna clean up bird poop.
I only handle 5 or 6, and they're great little birds, but. So we have many IV cocktails that we have put together, and you'll see those, as part of the membership in your little packets. But they're everything from, you know, another advantage of glutathione, it's kind of skin lightening and brightening. It makes your skin really pretty if you do that. But we have things for anti-aging. We have IVs for health and wellness. We have IVs to stimulate your immune system. We have IVs if you're just kind of stressed out. We have IVs, you know, if you just want to get more energy. So those things can be custom designed for you, which is pretty cool.
No,
You can
look
purchase
for the
them
time.
whenever you want. You can purchase them by the month. You can purchase
Human
them by the
services.
year.
Oh, Department of Human Services.
So yeah, we can talk about that.
I retired from
So,
Social Security.
I talked a little bit here, I'm gonna shut up for just a second, she's got a giveaway here real quick, what are we giving away?
And they still do
Let
with
me
me.
think.
I love those guys.
I don't even know who they are, none of them are from here. I haven't even been in that
Yes,
office
yeah.
since I retired.
Yeah.